The auditorium shimmered in gold and arrogance. Polished crystal arches loomed over the grand conclave hall of the Galactic Empire, each shaped like a spine. Thousands of alien dignitaries filled the velvet stands, reptilian high priests in cobalt silks, feathered diplomats with blinking translator symbiotes, cephalopod admirals bubbling through glass domes. Beneath the planetary banners, they waited with practiced boredom. Today was not about negotiation. Today was about demonstration. A rising fanfare of artificial harmonics swelled through the air, designed to stir awe in lower life forms. It made some of the insectoids click in rhythm, but the sentient fungi just blinked their spore lights, unimpressed. A hologram surged into place above the dais. 9 million human faces flickered to life. They stood in uniform lines, shackled, exhausted, emaciated soldiers, medics, tech operators, some barely old enough to have known Earth as home. The holo panned slowly over the prisoners in Sector 17, silent, their gazes hollow and brave. Then they burned, incinerated in synchronized waves of white plasma. No screams played, only a triumphant orchestral swell crafted by an AI composer to symbolize justice. As the last face dissolved in light, the hall erupted into applause. Clawed digits slapped together. Tendrils writhed approval. The delegates of the 89 core species rose to their feet in roaring ovation. Some even turned to each other in laughter, mocking humanity's weakness, their sentimentalism, their absurd attachment to rights. Only one being remained seated. An older man human, dressed plainly in a dark gray suit that hadn't been tailored for a decade. His loafers were scuffed, his silver hair combed with one clean part. A single pin glimmered on his lapel, a blue sphere circled by 12 stars. The mark of Earth's now abolished galactic diplomatic mission. His name was Noah Ridgewell. He stirred no attention until the applause faded and the hologram dimmed, leaving behind the clean silence of empire. Then, with the deliberateness of a funeral priest, Noah stood. A microphone extended toward him from the floor like a serpent. He didn't clear his throat. He took a sip from the mug in his hand, ceramic, chipped, and said softly, "Thank you for that broadcast." Some delegates turned to face him, amused. Others simply resumed checking their news feeds. Noah didn't raise his voice. "The clarity was appreciated," he continued, setting the mug on the polished rail beside him. "We understand now how seriously you view protocol breaches, and we regret that we failed to meet your standards for captivity decorum." A few diplomats chuckled. From the Sharnak cluster, a gold-plated ambassador muttered, "They still believe this is about rules." Noah's gaze didn't waver. He didn't blink often. He spoke as though measuring time. "Humanity has always respected order. We learn from those above us. We imitate. We adapt." He folded his hands behind his back. "We thank you for teaching us the shape of your justice." The hall grew quieter. Some of the applause-drunk attendees were beginning to notice that Noah hadn't flinched, hadn't shouted, hadn't pleaded. He smiled. It was a small thing. Not warm, not cold. It was the kind of smile one gave after closing a door on a memory too heavy to carry further. "You ask us to accept this as consequence, to acknowledge our loss and move on. That would be rational. And I assure you, humanity is rational." His fingers tapped once on the rail. "Thus, Earth has updated its protocol." The silence grew deeper. From the shadows behind the dais, a massive being slithered forward. Admiral KRRT-Chen of the hegemonic core worlds. He loomed like a spine serpent, plated in black obsidian armor. His voice rasped through 10 vocal cords, translated into harsh galactic common. "You dare threaten the Empire?" KRRT-Chen sneered. "You come to our hall and speak of updates after your species collapsed like wet fungus." Noah turned toward him with the same patience one might offer a child who'd mispronounced a difficult word. "No, Admiral," he said gently. "There is no threat. Only notification." The air tensed. Monitors scanned Noah's vital signs. No adrenaline spike. No raised heart rate. His pulse read like a monk's. "Your broadcast has been received," Noah said. Then he bent down, retrieved his mug, and added, "Earth thanks you." He walked back to his seat without flourish, sat, and took another sip of coffee. Behind him, a shimmering figure flickered into view for just a breath of time. Some delegates gasped, others didn't even catch it. But the few who did saw a sigil, a rotating hexagon etched in crimson light, surrounded by rotating numerals. Not galactic, not any known language, just numbers. Operation code, AE0001. Status, activated. The feed blinked out. The conclave's spotlight dimmed. Someone in the crowd finally whispered what others dared not ask aloud. "Where is Earth's fleet?" The delegates turned. For the first time in 1,000 years of imperial power, silence did not mean triumph. It meant calculation, and humanity had just finished theirs. The days after the execution broadcast were filled with smugness. Galactic news feeds ran looped commentaries of the Sector 17 purging, framing it as a necessary imperial correction. Headlines blazed across 100 systems. Humanity learns its place and the end of the Earth problem. On entertainment channels, comedians reenacted the speech of Ambassador Noah Ridgewell with over-exaggerated yawns and coffee mugs filled with slime. And yet, beneath the glimmering veneer of victory, a strange unease took root. Not in the Empire's halls, but in its fringes, in the quiet spaces between certainty. On Station Sarika 9, floating in the Valari belt, Analyst Third Class Krytuk folded his upper arms nervously. His lower pair worked the console, pale fingers tapping through encrypted trade logs and sensor readings. His crest feathers bristled with the instinctual alarm of prey-sensing storm. Something wasn't aligning. Trade shipments scheduled for Earth's orbit had stopped 3 days prior. Not rerouted, just canceled. No distress signals. No formal closures. Simply erased from existence. He checked again, and again, then ran it through a second cluster. Same result. He rubbed his beak with a trembling hand. "Why," he whispered, "would a species that just lost 9 million people cancel bananas?" Krytuk wasn't a warrior. He'd studied xenoeconomics and poetry. He wore loose robes that trailed when he walked. But he had one gift others lacked. He noticed quiet things. Across the stars, that same silence deepened. Earth sent no official condemnations. No retaliation fleets. No last cries for vengeance. Not even a whimper of grief. The transmissions simply stopped. On Cairo Delta, a military school asteroid known for breeding some of the Empire's finest strategic minds, a young Vorthian cadet asked his instructor during lecture, "Why hasn't Earth retaliated?" The instructor laughed and replied, "Because they can't." The cadet didn't laugh. He kept seeing the human ambassador's face in his dreams, not angry, not broken, just calm, terrifyingly calm. Somewhere in the archives, he found an ancient Terran quote etched into an old interrogation transcript from Earth's World War II. "Beware the fury of a patient man." On the capital moon of Velzun, the High Imperial Council convened to review post-broadcast sentiment. The emissary of war, a bloated crustacean with neon green eyes, sloshed through a vat of liquefied salt water and declared, "The humans are grieving. Let them sink into despair." A voice from the corner answered flatly, "They are not grieving." Everyone turned. It was Zotar, the only non-imperial advisor ever allowed to sit at the council's edge. She was of the Valari, a crystalline species long thought extinct. Transparent and angular, she seemed like a humanoid sculpture carved from starlight. Her voice was low, melodic, and cold. "They are calculating." The war emissary's limbs flared. "We incinerated their core troops. What can they calculate?" Zotar didn't move. "You mistook tears for weakness. You mistook patience for absence. You mistook their silence for surrender." Her gaze, though refracted and unreadable, made the room colder. "They are predators in silk. And they're doing math." In the days that followed, ships went missing. Not destroyed, missing. Full scout squadrons sent into fringe sectors never reported back. Courier drones returned with memory wipes. Monitoring satellites in neutral zones blinked off for minutes, then returned with their orbits subtly altered, just enough to skew sensor drift. It was as if something behind the curtain had adjusted the strings of reality. The Empire's AI war table, the one that predicted 98.7% of galactic threat patterns, began outputting errors. Not malfunctions, but blank data windows marked unresolvable human variable. Someone had changed the code. On Earth, no military was mobilized. No warships were launched. No rallies, no broadcasts, no presidential addresses. Instead, a small group gathered underground, beneath the scorched remains of what was once Geneva. 10 figures sat in a circle of silence. No one wore rank. Noah Ridgewell stood barefoot on the cold concrete, sleeves rolled, brewing tea on an old copper coil. He handed each of them a cup. The woman beside him, pale, sharp-eyed, with a scar across her lip, spoke first. Timetable. 3 days early, Noah said. The man across from her, dressed like a history teacher, but missing 2 fingers, smiled faintly. That's a first. The youngest among them, a boy no older than 20, chimed in. I still don't understand. Why didn't we strike back already? Noah handed him a cup of tea. We did. The boy blinked. But there was no. We rewrote their expiration date, Noah said softly. We don't strike. We rearrange inevitability. One of the others chuckled dryly. You sound like my therapist. They sat quietly for a moment, sipping, steam rising between them like ancient ghosts. In space, the Imperial flagship Virtue of Order adjusted its orbit around the Chiros Gate. A junior technician ran diagnostics and noticed that one of the fallback warp coordinates had been changed from a secure sector to an uncharted asteroid belt near Proxima. He submitted a report. By the time it reached the bridge, every navigation system aboard the Virtue crashed. Their override passwords, encrypted and known only to the top 7 admirals, had been replaced by a single phrase that no one could decrypt, except Noah Ridgewell. Elsewhere, whispers emerged across systems that certain criminal syndicates tied to humanity had gone completely silent. Pirate groups in Jupiter's orbit were no longer traceable. Mining drones across the belt had vanished. Communication relays once jammed with Earth's irrelevant media, sitcoms, recipes, and blues music had gone dark. It was the darkness that frightened them most, because it wasn't silence born from loss. It was silence shaped like preparation. On Sarika 9, Krytuk watched as Earth's old trade archives, those strange lists of spices, wood, and rare metals, began flashing access denied across the galactic web. The AI monitoring networks had locked them with rotating cryptographic locks no one could trace. He sent a final message to Central Command. Something is coming. Not war. Worse. A response calibrated with precision. And we gave them the data. He didn't get a reply. In the cold vacuum around Earth, a derelict satellite began broadcasting one sound, a faint metronome, ticking once per second. No context, no language, just a rhythm. One tick for each of the 9 million lives taken. It would take 104 days for the sound to stop. When a new diplomatic summit was proposed to review and settle remaining tensions with Earth, no humans responded. But just before the summit could be canceled, one message slipped through. No encryption, no greeting, just a sentence. Apologies. We're currently busy. You'll know when we're done. Noah Ridgewell received a call from a former admiral now working as a farmer. He answered. They're nervous, the voice said. They should be. You want me to return? Noah's smile was audible even across light years. Not yet. We're still setting the table. The call ended. In the Galactic Conclave Hall, a new debate sparked. Should the Empire initiate preemptive strikes against remaining human colonies? The discussion never reached conclusion, because one of their moons went dark. Not destroyed, just dark. No stars reflected off its surface. No transmissions escaped. Probes sent and came back hollow, blank data, no errors. Like the moon had been rewritten out of existence by something polite enough to leave the orbit intact. A final question echoed in the chambers of the Empire's Grand War Council, whispered by an aide too young to be wise. Why is Earth quiet? No one had the answer. But Noah Ridgewell was already preparing the next cup of tea. The Charas Gate was supposed to be impossible to infiltrate. A 5-tiered spatial lock rotated within a dark matter storm, guarded by 23 Imperial fleets, each one larger than Earth's entire navy before first contact. Surveillance spheres orbited like a crown of electric eyes, reading every ripple of cosmic background radiation for unauthorized motion. And yet it was quiet. Too quiet. Commander Kel Uroth of the Jarnathi Empire peered into the holoscreen with a tightening expression, his 3 eyelids blinking out of sync. No energy pings. No distress beacons. Just void. His second-in-command, a thin-skinned Mantari with translucent bones, spoke cautiously. Could be a cloak ship. Kel snorted. Humans don't have cloaking tech. He regretted the sentence the moment it left his tongue. In the lower quadrant of the screen, a line of text scrolled, unprompted. We didn't need cloaks. You gave us mirrors. The screen froze. Then flickered. The whole command deck dimmed by 10%. Every officer stopped breathing, literally. The atmosphere filtration system had quietly ceased. 3 seconds later, it resumed. But the message remained. Commander Kel tried to override the interface. His command codes failed. He entered his biosig, rejected. Then the lights turned off completely for 0.5 seconds. When they returned, a second message blinked overhead. This is not war. This is recursion. At first, they thought it was just psychological. But it wasn't just the fleet. It was the systems. All systems. At the Core Senate on Velzun, budget allocations began to misalign. Trillions of credits vanished into phantom accounts. Starports reported missing import logs. Mining colonies discovered their stockpiles of refined tritium had been replaced with perfectly identical crates, filled with rocks. Officials tried to blame internal corruption, then pirates. Then it escalated. Star maps used for centuries went wrong by decimal points. Ships arriving at familiar ports found new gravitational signatures. Orbital stations that had never drifted were now 6 kilometers off target. It was as if gravity itself had stopped trusting the Empire. Some thought it was sabotage. No one realized it was math. Noah Ridgewell walked through an orchard in what had once been Vermont, the early evening sun casting golden lines through the naked trees. Leaves hadn't grown back since the last bombardment, but the soil was healing. He bent down, touched the cracked bark, and whispered, "It'll bloom again." Behind him, 3 humans stood quietly in dust-colored coats. The woman with the scar, Elena, watched the horizon with narrowed eyes. They'll strike soon. They're afraid. Their patterns are erratic. They don't know what they're looking for, said Jonah, the ex-historian. And we haven't even started, added the boy, grinning. What next? Cut their comms. Noah didn't answer right away. He looked at the sky. No, he said softly. We confuse their gods. Back in orbit above Charas Gate, the Imperial fleet finally received a ping. An object had entered visual range. Not through hyperspace. Not through warp. It had simply arrived. It was a sphere 10 kilometers in diameter, polished like obsidian. No engines. No windows. No visible energy output. It just hovered in place, like a thought that didn't belong. They scanned it. It didn't scan back. They fired a warning pulse. The pulse disappeared. No explosion. No echo. It was just gone. Inside the Imperial War Room, panic began to surface in coded language. One admiral declared, "This could be a bluff. Psychological warfare." Another whispered, "I don't think they're bluffing. I think we've already lost." Across the galaxy, similar orbs began to appear. Always silent. Always hovering. No 2 ever came from the same vector. No one could track their entry. Some hovered over military stations. Others near communication hubs. One appeared over the Imperial Zoo, right as an alien child pointed at it and said, "Mama, look." A watcher. The orbs did nothing. And yet, the Empire began to unravel. In a bid to reassert dominance, the Supreme Warlord of the Southern Reach ordered an orbital strike on one of the orbs near the mining world Thraxos Prime. The bomb disintegrated. Not in fire, but in formula. Hundreds watched as the warhead shattered mid-flight, particles folding inward into crystalline snow that fell slowly, never melting. And still the orb did not move. Back in Geneva's underground room, Noah sat across from a single terminal. The AI interface pulsed softly. Execute pattern Sigma. He tapped the keys once. The message vanished. The boy looked over. That's it. That's the turn, Noah said. You mean the counterattack? Noah looked up at him, eyes tired but alive. I mean the moment they realized we were never countering. We were calculating. In the Valari archives, Zotar stood before a council of her own kind, the ancient crystalline elders who no longer spoke to the Empire. Their bodies hummed with solar resonance as she addressed them. We warned them. They mocked Earth's restraint. Now Earth is rewriting the equation. One elder pulsed a question into the air. What is the outcome? Zotar's voice rang clear. There will be no war. Only results. Soon, more anomalies appeared. Imperial star charts began labeling sectors with terms like out of bounds or undefined. Ships entering those zones returned days later, reporting they'd traveled through non-existent constellations or looped in time. One captain swore he saw his own grave on a moon that didn't exist. Panic turned to fragmentation. Internal systems couldn't verify friend from foe. AI began hesitating. Calculations, once instant, took minutes. Codes failed. Passwords changed themselves. No one realized humanity had fed the Empire's systems a virus not built from software, but from language. They'd written riddles into code, illogical loops, cultural references, semantic traps. Simple things, quotes from novels, Shakespearean insults, baseball statistics. Things no algorithm could parse because they weren't meant to be parsed. They were meant to confuse. A fleet commander shouted in rage during a malfunction. They replaced our targeting algorithm with what is this? Who's on first? Earth hadn't launched a single missile, and the galaxy was losing. In the orchard, Elena finally asked the question aloud. What are we after? Noah didn't answer right away. He knelt, pressed his palm into the soil again. We're not trying to win, he said. We're trying to end the game entirely. A breeze moved through the branches. In the heart of the Empire's capital, a single Imperial general stood on his balcony, watching a small black orb hover outside his window. He drew his sidearm, fired once. The bullet never reached it. Instead, the orb rotated slightly, revealing a phrase etched on its surface in clean human English. Checkmate in 3. His sidearm fell from shaking fingers. He turned to run, and the lights in his city turned off. Not a flicker, just finality. In the silent control room beneath Earth's surface, the AI interface pulsed once more. Secondary protocol triggered. Systemic failure at 71%. The boy asked, "What does that mean?" Jonah smiled, the way a man smiles when the last page of a prophecy proves true. It means they just realized something. Noah exhaled softly. That extinction doesn't need rage. He stood. It only needs math. Then, somewhere far away, an alien child, watching the stars with wide silver eyes, pointed again. "Mama," she whispered. "The numbers are falling." The night sky above her world began to rearrange. The Empire had no word for surrender. Their language held 1,000 phrases for conquest, 100 terms for victory, but none for the quiet collapse of order under the weight of inevitability. By the time they realized they needed one, it was too late. On the throne world of Velzun, the Senate dome, carved from a moon-sized diamond and reinforced with dark matter bands, stood like a monument to control. It had stood for 9,000 years, impervious to siege, shielded from entropy. That morning it cracked. Not from an explosion, or a weapon, or even a declaration. It cracked because a single imperial ledger, a spreadsheet used to track interstellar shipments, updated itself. And in doing so, it rerouted 87 trillion credits through a loop transaction that collapsed a third of the Empire's banking system in 7 seconds. 7 seconds. The senators screamed. Some ran. Others clutched their translator pendants, begging for comprehension. Only Zotar stood still. The crystalline Valari watched the cracks spread across the dome as calmly as she would observe a glacier melt. She did not mourn. She did not flinch. She simply whispered, "It's begun." She knew, as only the ancient species did, that empires do not die in flame. They die in silence, when their foundations rot beneath the gold. Across the stars, that rot bloomed. Orbital stations lost power with no sign of sabotage. Planetary AIs, once smug in their logic, began speaking in riddles. Hyperspace corridors drifted a fraction off their programmed axes, enough to scatter entire fleets into dead sectors. Communication satellites blinked and returned new maps, subtly changed, subtly wrong. Everywhere, systems failed, but nothing exploded. That was the part that unnerved them most. Humanity wasn't retaliating. They were editing. In the hidden orchard beneath old Vermont soil, Noah Ridgewell stood beneath an apple tree that hadn't bloomed in 30 years. It now held a single green apple. The boy beside him stared. "Did you plant that?" "No," Noah said. "I just stopped whatever was killing it." He plucked the apple gently and handed it to the boy. "Humanity never wanted extinction," Noah said. "We wanted room to grow. They made us believe we were weeds. But weeds learn." Elena approached from a tree line. Her eyes were sharp, her coat tattered from field work. "They've evacuated 5 worlds. Not military targets, archives. They think we're going to erase their history." "We're not," Jonah added, stepping beside her. "We're just making it incomplete." The boy bit into the apple. "Are we going to kill them?" Noah's face didn't move for a long time. "No," he said. "We're going to evolve them." He gestured to the sky. "We offered peace. They chose to teach us war. So we taught ourselves understanding. Now we've outgrown their rules." "And what if they beg now?" Elena asked. "What if they finally offer a treaty?" Noah's gaze was distant. "Then we'll know it's real. Because now they understand what they're kneeling before." On Velzun, a transmission crackled through the crumbling diplomatic network. A single imperial dignitary, voice trembling, sent it to Earth. It read, "What do you want?" There was no reply. Instead, hundreds of alien planets began receiving packages. Physical ones, delivered via reactivated courier drones. Inside each one, a simple box. Inside the box, a children's book. Handwritten, cloth-bound, untraceable. On the cover, "How to Build a Civilization." Inside, blank pages. Every page, empty. Every page, an accusation. Back in the Churas sector, the obsidian sphere remained. Still hovering. Still silent. An alien crew approached with scanners modified to resist any quantum interference. The moment they powered up, the entire ship lost gravity. Not by force. By consent. The orb didn't pull them. It simply made them forget what gravity was. For 6 minutes, the crew floated in dreamlike calm, unable to feel the concept of down. When gravity returned, they couldn't speak for hours. When they did, their first words were, "They were never trying to destroy us. They were trying to change the definition of power." On a shattered moon in the Exos ring, a colony of pacifist scholars decoded a message hidden in their stellar charts, one layered through a pattern of micro-constellation shifts. It read, "This isn't extinction. It's evolution. We've outpaced you in silence. We've outthought your future. You taught us empire. We built legacy." Some begged to ally with Earth. Others begged to die quickly. But no new warships came. Only absence. Only silence. And the slow erasure of relevance. On the remnants of Earth's surface, beneath the cracked spires of what was once Nairobi, Noah walked barefoot among rusted drone husks. Children followed him, carrying books, real ones, printed, heavy. "Will they ever visit again?" one child asked. "If they do," Noah said, "they won't come as masters." He paused, watching the skyline glitch, an intentional failure in their holographic concealment net. The galaxy could see Earth again, now. Not broken, not burning, blooming. The child tugged at his sleeve. "Are we still human?" Noah knelt beside her. "We're more." Far above, in orbit, The Empire's last functioning battlecruiser received a final override signal. From inside, their AI core flashed a message in Terran English. "We thank you for broadcasting our dead. In return, we have broadcast your future." No ads. No warning. Just the ending. Then the crew looked out the window. They saw Earth, covered in green, alive, at peace. They expected to feel hatred. Instead, they felt small. In the orchard, Elena lit a match. A small fire crackled in the barrel. Jonah poured the last of the Imperial blueprints into the flame. Navigation codes, defense plans, star maps. "Done," he said. Noah nodded. The boy whispered, "Was it mercy?" Noah's reply was quiet. It was maturity. The stars overhead rearranged slowly, one constellation after another bending subtly, forming a pattern too vast for anyone but Earth to comprehend. A message written not in words, but in time. And across the stars, every empire began to understand. Extinction had always been a myth. What humanity had delivered was replacement, not through war, but through a better way to be. One final orb hovered into place over Velzun's crumbling Senate dome. It played no sound. It delivered no threat. Only a beam of warm light, casting the silhouette of a single word across the ruin below. Peace. And for the first time in 9,000 years, the Empire understood it.